You pronounce your name Rashad?
Yep, it's Rashad. Yes, sir.
Got it.
All right, good afternoon. Greetings, everyone. This is another episode of The Wealthy Educator here with Rashad, and I really appreciate you all for tuning in. If you happen to run across this video, please like and share the video, and also subscribe to the channel, The Wealthy Educator on YouTube. Today, I have a very, very, very special guest. I have Mr. Andrew Hallam, and he is known as the Millionaire Teacher. Millionaire Teacher, that's like an oxymoron, but he did it. So today he's going to kind of explain how he did it. Mr. Hallam, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you taking your time and joining us today. How are you?
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks so much, Rashad. I'm doing really well, thanks. The sun's shining outside, so I've got no complaints.
Awesome. Why don't you tell everyone where you're from?
Where am I from? Well, I was born in England, and my family moved to Canada when I was young, so I was really raised in Canada. Okay. And it's been an interesting journey because I was a teacher in British Columbia. And so I taught in BC, and then in 2002, I took a year off where I decided I was going to just travel. So took a year, traveled, and then the school principal who I had on Vancouver Island at the high school I taught at ended up moving to Singapore, and he moved to started working at a private school there. And he sent me an email, and he says, "Yeah, I know you're traveling the world. You're having a great time, but let me tell you, this place is pretty cool. And if you're interested, I can line you up with an interview with the superintendent." So you just fly to Boston, have a clam chowder with the guy, and if he likes you, you have a job there. So that's what ended up happening. I never did go back to my old job in Canada. I ended up taking this job in Singapore. And so I was there for 12 years, and that's where I met my wife, who you met.
Yes.
And then in 2014, she decided that she wanted to take a year off. Let's take a break. And so I said, yeah, okay, let's do that. Take a break. And instead of going back to work, 1 year led to 2, which led to 3, which led to 4, which is we're on our 7th year now. And we're sort of COVID stuck right now. So we came to British Columbia for a 12-day visit. And this is where my family is. So my parents are here. I'm actually in my parents' house right now. So so we came here just for a 12-day visit. But as you know, in March of 2020, everything changed. So we've been kind of stuck here. But it's okay.
Wow. So, why don't you basically tell everyone about your journey to financial independence, and why don't you kind of fill everybody in on a story with the mechanic? I think that's an interesting story that I read about.
Yeah, it's funny because when you meet these people we all meet and read people who are supposedly self-made, they did it all on their own. But what I find, Rashad, is there's always there's a pivotal moment where something happens, where maybe you meet somebody who ends up giving you some information or inspiring you or believing in you in some way. And for me, I was going to university and I wanted to become a teacher. And I was working a summer job at this bus depot. And so my job is basically just fueling the buses, washing the buses. It wasn't a hard job. You just driving through an automated bus wash. Just make sure you keep it in a straight line. And the guys told me, the other mechanics said to me, hey, look, if this mechanic wants to talk to you about money, make sure you listen to him because he's a self-made millionaire. And I said, okay, so what? No, that doesn't work. There's no way. The guy's a mechanic. He's got a couple of kids, and there's no way this guy who pulls wrenches is a millionaire. And he was 48 at the time. And one day he asked me, it was weird. He brought me into his office. He had an office. We were working the night shift, and he brings me into this office and he asks me, what would you do if I gave you 10 grand right now? And I thought he was just oh my God, is he going to give me some money? The millionaire mechanic is going to give me some money. And, obviously there's that little thought in my head, but that was just a bit of a pipe dream. Really what he was doing is he was just wanting to see what I would do with it. He was just really curious about young people and how they thought. And I said, well, I would put that money towards my school fees. And he said, well, that's a pretty acceptable answer. And months later, he told me that if I said I would buy a new stereo or I would put it towards a new car, He said he probably wouldn't talk to me again unless he had to. So, he convinced me to start investing money. And he said, look, here's how compound interest works. And if you start when you're young, you don't have to save as much as most people in your peer or professional group. You can save less than them and end up with more money just by starting at a young age. And I said, like, I don't have any money. Like, I can't invest. I have nothing. And I'm going to school and the whole bit. And he said, look, I've watched you go over to that vending machine. You go over there on your break and you bring out a Coca-Cola or whatever, bag of chips, chocolate bar. And he said, if you had to, because this was the thing too, Rashad, he said, start doing 100 a month now. I'm like, I can't. And he basically said, look, if you had to, could you spend like $3 a day on that vending machine? Because I watch you at that vending machine. I know you're probably pretty close to that anyway. Mm-hmm. Some nights more than that. And I went, yeah, I guess I could. And he's like, college boy, do the math. Like, that's $100 a month.
Yep.
And it dawned on me, and I went, oh my gosh, he's right. So I ended up opening up an account, and I bought, at the time, I didn't really know much, didn't know any better. I was 19 years old, and I bought a bunch of actively managed mutual funds. But it was a start, like it got me going. So that $100 a month, I didn't see it. I had it taken out of my account as if it were like a small tax. So I was never tempted to spend it. And then I got pretty excited. I started reading more and more about investing early, the power of compound interest. And I took a little job working for this guy down in a wealthy area of the city, and I would like wash his car and sweep his driveway and just general chores around his house every Saturday. Mm-hmm. And I took all that money, everything that I made there, and I added it to the money that I was investing. And so over time, and then when I started working as a teacher, I started putting more and more money away. And then eventually, as you know, it didn't take as long as I thought. I was really frugal, no question. Mm-hmm. I was really frugal, but I don't feel like I really denied myself of anything. Mm-hmm. So I had a lot of fun. There are a lot of people that think that like material things equal life satisfaction or happiness, but so much research suggests that that's not it at all. It's your friendships, it's your relationships, it's the experiences that you have. So when I did spend money, I would spend it on travel, and in traveling, I would get to meet like new and interesting people. And to me, that's gold. Like meeting people from different places, different cultures, grew up differently, different religions, totally different backgrounds. Man, that to me is gold. Like I love it. I feed off it. I learn so much. And so that's essentially where I did spend, but I didn't spend on much money on material acquisition. So give you an example. So much of that is still in play with me today. So I'll spend a lot of money to travel. And I just came out from outside and I was washing my car. And I was thinking about it as I was washing this thing. For me, buying a car has always been like, put a little bit of effort into it, learn. And the mechanic taught me this. He said, like, cars, man, they're hugely depreciating assets. He says, rich people, they'll maximize the amount of money that they're going to spend on something that's an appreciating asset, but they'll minimize mostly what they're going to spend on a depreciating asset like a car. So it's funny because I was thinking about this as I was washing that thing. And I guess I bought it a low mileage Volkswagen Golf. And it's like immaculate. Like it doesn't have a dent in it or a scratch on it, or obviously it doesn't have any rust. I'm washing this thing, I'm looking at it and going, wow, this thing is it's just such a good car. Rashad, it cost me $4,500.
Wow.
And I've had it for 6 or 7 years.
That's amazing.
It's an awesome car.
That's incredible. Yeah, I had a 2003 Honda Pilot up until about a year and a half ago, and it was still running perfectly, but my wife just wanted she wanted a Honda Odyssey. We went ahead and paid cash for it, but I missed that Pilot. Like I would have driven it as long as possible. I had the worst car on campus, but it ran good.
There's something kind of fun about that, isn't there?
Absolutely. I took pride in it every day coming up here, knowing I had the junkiest car. Like, I took pride in that.
I mean, for this thing, it maybe it looks a little dated because it's 2004, but it's super clean. I keep it really well maintained. It's a good car. It's not really like a junker. Okay, it's old, but it's not a piece of junk. It's kind of a good car.
Well, and you drive around with that car, nobody's gonna guess that guy's a millionaire.
It's funny because there's a guy, Jonathan Clements, who wrote for the Wall Street Journal, and he said that if people's net worth had to be by law posted on their license plate, he said that he believes that high status cars would cease to be status symbols.
Wow.
And I think, oh man, that makes a lot of sense. So the guy who wrote The Millionaire Next Door, a guy named Thomas Stanley, unfortunately.
Rest in peace, right?
Yeah. That's such an unfortunate thing. Killed by a drunk driver in 2015. So he and his daughter were doing an update on The Millionaire Next Door. Did you know about that?
I believe it's The Next Millionaire Next Door or something.
Yeah. And so she continued the research, and she did a survey to see what was the median price paid for a car by American millionaires, and it was $35,000. So that was what the typical American millionaire paid for their latest car. And when I go down, like we've got a condo complex, we've got a condo, sorry, in Victoria. And when I go downstairs and I look around, and most of the cars I see down there are worth more than $35,000. Yeah. But I'd be surprised if even 2 or 3 of them had net worths of $1 million. I'd be surprised if any of them did, actually.
Absolutely. It's such a rare thing, and I sometimes hear stories of generals in the military who say, they have crappier cars than, some of the people that are under them. And they know they might make like 1/3 or 1/4 of the salary. Yeah. They're driving around these, $50,000, $60,000 cars. So I completely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So at about 19 years old, you had an epiphany with the mechanic. So what is the earliest memory that you can recall of money? Any financial lesson before that?
Probably a paper route.
Okay.
And so in a way, so this is how I see it. There are people who will say they were born into privilege, and in a weird way, I say I was born into privilege, and here's why. No, my parents were not rich. So my dad, ironically, was also a mechanic, and my mom, she worked part-time, sort of a part-time retail store job. So she earned minimum wage at a retail store, and she always wanted to make sure that we were home when she got back from, when we got back from school, we finished school for the day. She always wanted to make sure we were home. So the neighborhood, at the time when I think back, it didn't seem like it was that. It seemed fine. But when I look back, I realized a lot of things about why my mom wanted to make sure she was home. My best friend when I was about 11 or 12, ended up in prison. Another friend of mine ended up. Two of my friends, one of my best friends in high school ended up in prison. There were fights all the time. It was just and it wasn't that rough. At the time, I didn't really think of it as that rough, and it's not. There are rougher places for sure, but my mom prioritized actually being there, so being that sort of stable influence when we got home, so we didn't get into too much trouble, because there was trouble there. If you were had a little bit too much free time on your hands, there was trouble there, and that was it. It was knowing that and having my parents not really having much money. So there were 4 kids, and my dad's not earning a ton of money. My mom's definitely not earning a lot of money. And so if we wanted something, we had to pay for it. And that is the sweet spot. So that's where my privilege came in. It's that if I wanted a pair of shoes when I was 13, I delivered newspapers when I was 12. So if I wanted a pair of shoes, and I had to buy them. And I'm telling you, that's what I call privilege. Like it's a sweet spot where we're not actually in poverty, but we're certainly not rich. We're sort of, I guess closer to I guess we're on the left side of the middle, really. Not obviously we were probably some of the lower income families in our neighborhood, but just having to work for the stuff that I had was so pivotal because it taught me the value of money. Like,
Yes.
no one gave me a new bike. No one gave me these shoes. Occasionally, if it was Christmas or whatever, I'd get gifts like other kids. But how about you? Like your upbringing, because you're interested in this stuff. So I'm kind of curious. I know the interview is supposed to go one way, but I don't want it to go one way. I want to hear your story too.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking me, man. Yeah, so I definitely did not have a financial well-off upbringing. I had hardworking parents. My mom ended up being a stay-at-home mom for my little brother and I. My dad, he drove trucks. So my dad was one of those fathers who was he was there. He was always available, which obviously is a catch-22. So instead of, we at the time we lived in the Northeast, we lived in Connecticut. That's where I was born. And, my dad didn't want to drive across country because then obviously he's not going to see us as much. But if you drive across country, you're going to make a lot more money. But he didn't want to do that. He wanted to be, present. So, he wasn't making that much money. I think my dad dropped out of school maybe in the 8th grade, but just with his work ethic and just everything else, he taught us some really good skills, and he was always there for us. He was a hardworking dad, and even my mom will tell you he's the best dad we ever could have hoped for. Just didn't make a lot of money, and we didn't hold that against him or anything. We did understand, like, hey, if we put something in a pawn shop. Pawn shops, it's meant that you get the things out. We would never get it out. And we understood that,
Yeah.
So if we had a Nintendo, the original Nintendo, and we pawned it so we can get groceries for that, we knew it wouldn't be, we knew it wouldn't return to us. So we knew now we had to start saving more money to get another one. And that was a cycle. And, we understood it. That didn't change the love that we have for our parents. It did teach me some lessons that said, my parents always put us in position to be better than they were financially. And we're trying to do the same thing with our kids as well. So my financial lessons growing up was, hey, I need to provide a very solid background and a solid footing for our children when I have children. And it always has driven me. And now we're at a point now, my wife and I tell our kids all the time, like, they're super privileged. Like, there are a lot of things they know for a fact that when they wake up, unless it's a bad storm, they know that the lights are going to be on. They're going to have warm water. They've never had to wonder where the next meal was going to come from. So that in itself is a blessing. And while we didn't have a lot of things growing up, we have those experiences. So just the fact that my parents did instill in us hard work and, always being available, always working hard, and always doing what we need to do to provide, we pass that on to our children. And my wife is the same. She had 2 hardworking parents and very responsible parents with money. So, I think that it has instilled in us as parents that we need to always be supportive of our children. So our children are very privileged when it comes to their upbringing, and I don't, I don't find fault in that or anything. Like, I don't feel ashamed of that. And obviously, I'm an empathetic guy, right? So sometimes, if there's a classroom, if one of my kids' class, they don't, some of the kids there aren't able to afford a field day T-shirt or something like that, I will offer to pay for the field day T-shirts for the whole class, because I understand my child isn't better than any one of those other 20 kids in the class just because he has parents who are doing okay financially.
Yeah.
So, that's how I am. But, I always wanted to be someone who didn't go through, or my kids don't go through the same thing that I went through financially, so that's what drives me.
Yeah. And I guess, to a point there, it's important for them to struggle a little bit. You create the artificial struggle. It's kind of like, I remember saying to some parents at Singapore American School where I was working, and they're all really well off. And I said to them, hey, look, you've got to create a little bit of struggle for your kids, because you can't get down on the floor and do push-ups yourself and think it's going to strengthen your kid, right? So there's that stress. There's a little bit of discomfort that we need to be able to put them through. And it's funny, when we talk about this, because it's one of the reasons wealth doesn't pass 3 generations. When we're talking about people who are really wealthy,
Yes.
because they do too much for their kids, thinking that they're going to help them out, and in the end, they just make them weaker. So as a result of that, you usually get one generation that builds the wealth, the family wealth, and the second generation kind of maintains it, and the third generation typically ends up squandering it because they haven't learned to respect the money, right?
Yeah.
You asked me that question, like, what was my first, my first memories with money, and it was earning it. It was actually earning it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate that sentiment. I agree with you 100%. So while we know for the most part, anything our kids ask us for, we know we can buy it.
Yeah.
They ask for Jordan sometimes. We tell them, who cares what's on your feet? Yeah. So we do create that internal struggle. They could, we can buy them iPhone 12s if we want to, but we don't. I mean,
yeah.
So they understand that. They know, they think we're already rich. They say that all the time, but we just tell them, hey, you're sitting in a classroom next to somebody who doesn't know where their next meal is going to come from.
Yeah.
And, we just try to instill in them the value of money. And we also let them know, just because mommy and daddy are doing okay doesn't mean that you will be in a great position later on in life if you don't take the steps you need to become successful.
Right.
And even if you do that, all it takes is one misfortune in your life. I know one time, former superintendent that I know, a buddy of mine, he told us a story of, he was down in Austin and he was talking to a homeless guy, and the homeless guy actually had his master's degree, and he had an unfortunate situation. He had a divorce or something, and then somehow he just had a tailspin after that, and he ended up being a homeless guy. So no matter how successful you are, how you can have 100 degrees, you can be a millionaire.
Yeah.
It just takes, one bad stroke of luck, stroke of luck. So stroke of luck. So I do appreciate that question. It definitely allows myself and a viewer, anybody else, to do a lot of soul searching and thinking. You can't hand things to anybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why don't you talk a little bit about the Millionaire Teacher, the book, and some of the things, what made you write it, and basically your career as a teacher? Because a lot of teachers, when we get into it, we're told, oh, you're doing it for the kids. You're only doing it for the kids. There's no money in it. And I always have said, I disagree with that. If you can, if you can be a janitor and become a millionaire, I don't know if you heard that story about a janitor who retired with like $40 million. But if you can do that, you can become a millionaire as a teacher. So tell us about that.
Yeah, this goes back to that mechanic, because he said to me, you can do the job that you love to do, even if it pays you, a middle income wage. But if you learn to manage money, you can be financially free. So don't sell yourself for a high paying job that you don't love, because you're going to spend a lot of time working. Work gives us purpose also. So obviously it puts food on our table, but it also gives us purpose. So he said, you want to be a teacher, and why? And I said, I think I'll be good at it. Like, I think I'll like it. I think it'll be fun. I like talking to kids, motivating people. That would be a great job for me. And honestly, I didn't feel like I worked. Like, I know that sounds really strange, but I enjoyed it so much that it didn't feel like work. Mm-hmm. And that's the ultimate sweet spot. But then, of course, it was, if I could ignore a lot of the same impulses that get tickled by marketers and by society about purchasing stuff you don't need, if I could ignore that, and then I could take what money I've saved, instead of keeping up with the Joneses in every material aspect, and put that money towards my future and financial independence, then I get the best of both worlds, because I get this job that I really love. And if I play my cards right, I can also end up with financial independence at a relatively early age. So, so that's where we're at. It's funny too, when it comes to work, people will often, I give a lot of talks around the world, and people will say, well, you're retired. And I'll say, well, I could be retired, but I don't want to be retired. And when I was younger, I never could quite understand. I wouldn't be able to understand that. The thing that I find is that I will continue to do things, working at things. And I might go back into the classroom too, because that's a lot of fun. But the coolest part is that everything that I do for work is on my terms because I love it.
Yes, sir.
So if I want to work at a school where I'm volunteering down in Guatemala, I can do that, get a real kick out of it, and not actually need the money.
Yes.
So I'm enjoying the freedom of having these options to do different things. It's been really exciting, and I've met so many really fun, cool, interesting people, as I mentioned before too, through that.
Awesome. So your why for FI is like choices and freedom.
Yeah, it
Awesome.
is. It is, and it's a funny thing because I can't turn off the teacher part. So the year off, like like I said, we planned on 1 year, and then 1 year led to 2 and led to 3. And what happened was I was getting these requests to come and speak to corporations, schools, international schools around the world. So it was like I had these classrooms, and they were everywhere. Like 2017, just as an example, I gave 90 talks in 13 different countries in 2017. It was amazing. Like I was in Ethiopia and Kenya and just Dubai and Thailand and Egypt, and these places that I would never ordinarily go, but people were asking you, can you come and deliver a finance seminar? And so it was a lot of fun because I was able to teach this stuff, and I get a lot out of that. Like I really enjoy that.
That is incredible. So you did mention something earlier, and are you familiar with Spark Joy, Marie Kondo?
No.
Okay, it's basically, so it's kind of like minimalism, So
Okay.
if it doesn't spark joy, so if it's something in your house, you just minimize everything in your house. If you touch it and it doesn't bring you joy, get rid of it. Either donate it or sell it or trash it or whatever,
Yeah.
And that's just basically minimalism. And I don't know if you have heard of the term hedonic treadmill, hedonic.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so I was interviewing a young millennial couple last night they have like $902,000 net worth, and they're like 33 years old. And I brought up the hedonic treadmill with them, and if you can just tell the viewers, what is your interpretation of the hedonic treadmill? Because I think once I learned about that term, it totally changed my financial life. So go ahead and tell me your experience with that, and then I can tell mine.
That's cool. Well, it's just that we get used to whatever it is that we own. So let's say I would go out and I buy the latest iPhone, and I'm excited at first. It's like a sugar fix, but it doesn't take long. A couple of weeks later, that new phone is just another phone. It just serves a purpose of communication for me. And it's much the same with a car. If I buy a new car, I'd be excited at first, but then I'm no longer thinking about the driving experience day to day. Other things enter my mind, like, am I late? Oh, look at that person with the pink hair. Oh, that person just cut me off. Day-to-day thoughts start entering your mind. You stop appreciating the vehicle. It just becomes another thing that gets you from point A to point B. Michigan State University did a really interesting study on vehicles, and they asked people to rate their driving experience, how much they enjoyed driving to the university that day. And of course, as with any good study, the subjects didn't really know what they were looking for. They asked them a whole variety of different types of questions. But this one was really interesting because they wanted to see if people who drove high-end cars, people who drove really nice Mercedes-Benzes and BMWs and Audis, for example, actually reported enjoying the driving experience on a day-to-day basis more than someone who drove like a Toyota or a Honda or a 10-year-old Volkswagen. And they found that there was no correlation. So hedonic adaptability is real. It's real. It's not just something minimalists say to make themselves feel good and to sort of to preach this concept. It's a real psychological thing. So then when you're looking at spending your money and spending it on something that doesn't enhance your life, you got to go, whoa, hang on a second. what does enhance my life? So when you're trying to figure out what you're spending money on, to figure out what it does that what's your wow factor? What is it that you enjoy? And for most people, research suggests, actually pretty much for all people, research suggests it's experiences. It's money that you spend doing things, because in doing things, you're building memories. And when you're building memories and doing things, you're usually doing them with people that you like and respect. And so this process of, like if you and I were sitting around a campfire and we were just shooting the breeze, we wouldn't be talking about a new car we bought 10 years ago and reminiscing. Like if you and I are old friends, we're going to be talking about some of the stupid stuff we did when we were kids, or the fun things we did and the experiences that we had, because those are things that become part of our identity, not the crap that we buy.
Great. That's basically a phenomenal, breakdown of the hedonic treadmill, also known as the hedonic adaptation. And my experience is, we bought our house in 2015, 15-year mortgage. We have about 9 years left on it. And almost every year since, yeah, man, we're pretty excited about that. Almost every year since then, we have window shopped. We've looked at upgrading homes and just getting something bigger and nicer. And last year, I put a question in one of the financial Facebook groups I'm in. What do you think about upgrading? Mm-hmm. So then one person said, hey, why don't you research the hedonic treadmill? So I looked it up and basically decided ever since then that if we decided to upgrade our home, that the high of having a nicer, newer home after probably about 2 weeks would be gone, maybe a month. Mm-hmm. But then that higher mortgage payment would be forever.
Yeah.
So you basically have to, whatever it is, if it's a car, if it's jewelry, if it's a house, you have to ask yourself if the long-term impact of the financial decision, will it outweigh the temporary high that you get from the new item? And if you truly dig deep and ask yourself that question, 100% of the time, it's going to say no.
Yeah.
There's nothing out there where the high is going to last as long as the pain of the burden, the new payment. So so that's incredible, man. If you just look at life as this item going to make me a happier person than I already am? And most of the time it's going to be no.
There's so Daniel Kahneman is an economist who won a Nobel Prize in behavioral economics. He talks a lot about this, and he says that happiness is the two categories, essentially. One is reflective happiness, and the second is experiential happiness. Reflective happiness is such that, say I ask someone who has a big house on the hill, they've got a big mansion, and I say, hey, are you happier in that big house than you would be, say, in my house down in the valley, just a small 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom place? That person who has the big house will always say, yes, oh yeah, I'm definitely happier in my house than I would be in yours or in my old house, which was smaller. Okay? Mm-hmm. So that's called reflective happiness, is what they think. Uh-huh. But experiential happiness is actually what they feel. So if you were to actually wire them up, or you were to question them in a different way to see how satisfied are they on a day-to-day basis just with life, and you were to isolate the variable of before and after that home purchase, you would find that, according to Daniel Kahneman's research, that home, obviously hedonic adaptation kicked in. That person ends up on that, obviously, the treadmill, because what will happen is they're thinking at some point in their hearts, they're like, I'm not really any happier than I was before, so I must need a bigger house now. Yeah. I must need a better car now. These are things that are going to make me happy. And a lot of people go into debt to do that. And if there is any link with happiness, it's that when it comes to financial, the strongest link is that debt equals misery. Debt equals anxiety. Debt equals often leads to depression. And we might not even know that that's what's doing it. People, the average person might not realize that's what's actually dragging their spirit down. It's almost this subconscious burden that they carry around with them. So, yeah, that's really cool that that someone had you research that and look into it, because how impactful and how that changed your life. I mean, that's so cool.
It's I'm telling you, it's incredible. And and another thing to add to it is like, no matter how high or how low an experience is, you will eventually gravitate back towards your baseline of happiness. So
Yes.
if a spouse or a parent dies, you're going to be very low for however long it is, but ultimately you'll get back to where you are, normally. And if you win $1 million, you'll be super high, and then eventually you'll gravitate back towards your baseline of happiness. So if more people learned about it, I think that we would, have less debt in our country and more people who are financially savvy and successful. And I do like what you say about experiences. So, a few years ago, I think about 2016, my wife and I decided to take our kids to Disney World. And it's somewhere I had never been and she had never been. Obviously, financially, it costs a lot of money. But at the time I said, okay, well, this $4,000 that we spend for Disney World, will it mean more now? The experience that we have that the kids can talk about, 80 years from now, or will the compound interest, that $4,000 in 20, 30 years might be 20,000 or 30,000. What's going to mean more when we're on our deathbeds? And we said the trip will mean a lot more. We can't take that money to our grave. So we took them on a 5-day cruise last year. We're going on an 8-day cruise with them this year. And I'm going to be taking my wife on a 7-day Alaskan cruise next year. So
nice.
One thing I'm splurging on is our experiences. I don't care what it is, how much it costs. If we can afford it, we're going to do it without question and without really being apologetic about it. And that's it. Just travel and experiences. Anything else, is negotiable. So cars and things like that, they don't, tickle my fancy or anything.
So, that's so true. When I give these seminars, I'll say to people, I want you to write down what your favorite material purchase was. Write it down and try and imagine, how you felt when you bought it and how much you enjoyed it when you first had it. So I actually have them physically, like piece of paper, write it down. Yeah. And then I'll say, now I want you to write down your favorite experiential purchase. Something that you paid money for that was an experience with someone you love and respect, friends or family or whatever. Write that down, write down how you felt about that. So I get them again to do that. And then I pose this question. I said, I'm like the Grim Reaper, and I come to you and you're laying on your deathbed and you have whatever, maybe you have a couple of months left to live. And I say, I am going to steal one of your memories. I'm going to steal the memory of your favorite material purchase, or I'm going to steal the memory of your favorite experiential purchase. Which do you want to give up? And which do you want to keep? And I'm telling you, every single time, people will quickly say, I'll give up the memory of the material thing, but I do not want to give up that memory I had with my kids, doing this thing where we went on this trip, or we went camping, or went to Disney World, Disneyland, whatever. Those are the things that are golden. And when sometimes, you kind of really, truly realize your own value system, when you recognize your own demise, you recognize your death, and things become so much clearer then for people.
Absolutely. Man, those are some great points. That's some great knowledge. And if people can really focus in on that, I think that they can make better decisions financially. So I really appreciate you mentioning that and bringing that up. So when you first started teaching, you had these lessons previously about how to become a millionaire, how to save. So you knew that you could become a millionaire being a teacher, which a lot of teachers go into it. They're not thinking, oh, I can become a millionaire doing this. So you already knew. So if you don't mind sharing, approximately what was your income at the time and how did you save?
Well, my income when I first started was, and I remember getting $2,800 a month. So I got paid every month.
Was that take home or after everything?
And that was take home, but that was Canadian. So say, I don't know, at the time, maybe 2,300 US, something like that per month. So obviously it wasn't a lot, but the salary went up obviously over time, and I was contributing to a pension. So the school district actually had a pretty good pension system too. So in that particular school district, if somebody just stays out of substantial debt, if they're somehow able to pay for their mortgage by the time they reach retirement age, and they don't end up having big credit card debts or big auto loan debts, they could be okay. I mean, they could be okay on that pension. But I started, as I mentioned, I in the very beginning didn't even think so much about the pension, and I just started to put this money away, realizing that if I invested money, it could give me some choices. And then I wanted to share what I learned. I think as teachers, as educators, that's what we want to do. It's almost in our DNA. So I would talk to people about it. I started writing for a magazine. I would write stories about it. And then eventually when I moved to Singapore, it was a private school I worked at, and nobody was on a pension. Like, nobody was contributing to a pension. And it was a great school. And it was, the pay was pretty good. But the problem was that by living overseas, you weren't contributing to a pension and you weren't contributing to Social Security. So if you stay overseas your entire working life, which many of my colleagues did, they would come back to the US and they hadn't contributed to Social Security. Many of them didn't have their minimum 40 quarters of contribution. So you only get back really a proportion of what you put in. So if you're not putting into Social Security, you're not going to get a heck of a lot out of it. So I realized, wow, I need to somehow try to help these people because they love what they're doing. They love being overseas, but they're not going to get a pension. They're not going to get Social Security. So I started giving out, I started doing free seminars. And then I started buying books for people and giving out free books. And then eventually that led me to writing my own book, because a lot of the books I gave out, people didn't understand. So my magazine editor said to me, look, you're kind of wasting money buying all these books for people. Why don't you try to write your own? So that's how Millionaire Teacher came to be.
And that's sold, was it over 1 million copies?
Oh, I wish. I don't think it sold that many, but I've never actually added it up. It's done really well. I know that it's done really well. So you'll laugh though, the contract that I signed was not a good contract. It was one of those things where here's the contract and they never expect you to sign it. And I was just super excited, and I signed the first contract. And I know it wasn't a great contract, but in the end, I can't really complain because it was it's a great experience, and it's a great teaching tool for people, I think. So I'm happy with that.
And it made it to #1 with Amazon, didn't it? I think 2011.
Yeah. So it was #1 on Amazon in the US for business, personal finance, for investing. It got as high as number 12 overall. And so it was up there with, 50 Shades of Grey, battling that for a while. So that was pretty exciting. That was pretty exciting.
That is exciting.
It hit #1 in Canada as well. So that was also pretty exciting to have, in terms of the business books, #1 for both countries. And then cracking the top 10, or at least in Canada, just cracked the top, let's say 15 for both countries. That was really exciting because you're competing with Stephen King and J.K. Rowling and whoever the heck was that woman who wrote 50 Shades of Grey.
Well, so earlier you spoke about actively managed funds, and I would recommend anybody, if you aren't saving or investing, start somewhere. So if the only thing you have access to is an active managed fund, fine. Yeah, that's better than not saving at all. But you like me are a huge advocate for index funds, and I can probably guess where most of your money is. Mine is with VTSAX, and that's what I recommend to people. Why don't you tell everybody about how you invest?
Oh, it's really quite simple. I think so my wife's account, and most of your audience is probably American, and my wife is American. And so we have everything, all of her money, in a Vanguard Target Retirement Fund. Okay. And so it's a basket of indexes wrapped up in a single product. So it has essentially what you have with is it VTSAX that you have?
Yes, sir.
So it's a US stock market index.
Yes, sir.
And then there's an international stock market component and then a bond market component, all wrapped up in a single fund. So it's a fully diversified portfolio wrapped up into one, and Vanguard rebalances it every year. So essentially kind of rebalances it with cash flow, money that comes in and out of it. So they're able to maintain a consistent allocation. So this helps to alleviate risk. And sometimes it can even enhance returns too, because through the process of rebalancing, what Vanguard is doing is selling a little bit on the high and buying a little bit on the low, just to maintain a consistent allocation between stocks and bonds. So my portfolio is really similar too. Like if you broke it all apart and you looked at it, it's comprised of a bunch of exchange traded funds. So the portfolio that's in my name, I can't actually directly use Vanguard because I'm not an American. My wife can. She uses the Target Retirement Fund, and it's amazing. She doesn't have to do anything. She just had money go directly from her bank account, just wiring into this thing, and she just forgets about it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And then mine is very much the same, but it's just a bunch of individual exchange traded funds, but very, very similar in terms of the construction.
Yeah, and the good thing about the Target Retirement Fund, so with VTSAX, you have to have a minimum of $3,000 to get started.
Mm-hmm.
With a Target Retirement Fund, you only need $1,000 to get started. Only difference is with a Target Retirement Fund, usually the ratio to expense ratio is like 0.14, 0.15, as opposed to 0.04 for VTSAX. However, the good thing about those funds, like you said, is that if you're young and you have a target retirement day of 20, 60 or something, it's going to be really high with the VTSAX or the total, the world market or whatever international fund, and then the bonds are going to be a little lower, and then gradually, like you said, it just flip flop. So by the time you retire, it should be mostly in bonds because you're pulling that income. So that's a great recommendation. Do you have any other investments like rentals or anything like that you have?
Well, with rentals, I don't. I think they're awesome if you can get rentals and you're really into it. But for me, I'm kind of lazy. So a rental property has what I call a PITA factor, PITA. It's a really it's a technical economic term, right?
Yes. Paying into something.
Yeah. I mean, and real estate can be great. Like rentals can be awesome. I just happen to be really, really lazy. I'm not really interested in managing properties, and so we have a home and it's paid for, so it's mortgage free, and we also have our investment portfolio. So that's about it. We keep things really clean and simple.
Do you have children?
We don't have children. We ended up marrying too late.
Oh.
Yeah, we gave it a go. And it didn't work out. But we're pretty happy. Life has turned out okay.
Nothing wrong with that. Hey, you have your path, and everybody has their own path. And it just didn't happen. But you're clearly living life to the fullest right now. So that's awesome. If you are speaking with an 18-year-old high school senior who's going to be graduating in a couple of weeks, and they tell you, I want to become a teacher, like Mr. Hallam became, and I want to become a millionaire, what would you say to them? Like, what would be the steps you tell them to take? First of all, to, stay out of student loan debt and to, build that portfolio and build that net worth?
Yeah, I think first I'd congratulate them and say, great. It's a great profession for people that really enjoy kids and want to fulfill that sense and that purpose. And I would try my best to talk to them about ignoring what they might deem to be normal. So our society, in large part, we're a society of debt, and we buy things that we can't afford. And I would try to say, look, most of the people in this neighborhood are leveraged. They've got lots of credit card debt. They've got auto loan debts. To try not to think like them. And of course, we've normalized that. We've normalized debt, but it's not healthy. So it's kind of like, if everybody's living on cotton candy, that becomes normalized. But I would do my best to try to gently show that 18-year-old that the cotton candy lifestyle here, one, it's not healthy, and two, it won't enhance your life satisfaction. So if you want to become a teacher, try to make sure that you buy what you can afford, and you try to ensure you start investing like at 18 years old. Oh my goodness. I just get really excited at the idea. I was teaching personal finance in Singapore. That was one of the courses I was teaching. And there was 1 year where, without me even telling the kids, 40% of the kids ended up opening up investment accounts. Like they started their portfolios of index funds. And I didn't even tell them. The funny thing, Rashad, if I told them to do it, I'll bet I would have had fewer do it.
You're probably absolutely correct about that. I mean, it is incredible, man. Just having the opportunity to have that dialogue and have those discussions with kids, because I will say this: there's a podcast called The Money Guy, and they work out of, I believe, Nashville, Tennessee. And one statistic they always give is that if you're a 20-year-old and every dollar you invest at 20 becomes $88 at 65. So what I like to say is that, all I do is say, okay, $1 in 45 years becomes $88. So I have 3 kids. My 10-year-old daughter is the one who is the nerd when it comes to money. So every time I give my kids money or make them earn money, I let them know, okay, so every dime you make for the rest of your life, try to set aside 50%. And they do that. They give it back to me. We put it in their Vanguard or Fidelity account, the UGMA. And my daughter will come back later and say, "Here, let me give you." So let's say I give $100, they'll give me 50 to put away. She might come back and give me another $30 to put away, because she knows that $30 in 45 years will be whatever 30 times 88 is. Yeah, so it's like, now I think I've created a monster in that she has a hard time spending money now. So she'll come, literally, like if she gets $100, we take the 50 off the top, then she'll come back and give me 30, then she'll keep giving me money. So she might end up only spending $5 to $8 out of 100. So it's a good thing, but at the same time, we want to have that balance. And I know balance is a big word for you at this moment.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, that's the name of my new book, which gets released in January. I see success as like a 4-legged table. So you have, obviously, to be successful, you need some degree of money. You need enough, right? And you also need your health. Health is huge. Health is definitely wealth. You need good relationships, and you need a sense of purpose. And so often I would see somebody, or you just get into general conversation with somebody who might say, "Oh, that woman over there, she's really successful. She owns her own law firm, and she's got the big house overlooking a lake, and she drives that top of the line Tesla. She's really successful." And I would say, like, I would sort of catch myself thinking that she might be successful, but not because of those things. The money is just an element. If she's not healthy, she's not maximizing her health. Let's say she's not maximizing her health, or at least doing what she can to eat right, get a little bit of exercise. She doesn't have to be an Olympian, but just doing something, because your body is your vessel, and it's the only one that you have. And you've got to look after it. So if you're not looking after it, this is so important, because of so many factors that knock-on effects to not looking after yourself, health-wise and socially and physically and all that sort of thing. And I would also look at the relationships. Like, if that woman on the hill has horrible relationships with her family, she's just not getting along with her friends, or not having friends because she works so hard, how much life satisfaction is she having? So I would often look at life satisfaction as a measurement of success. Yes. And that the final pillar would be that sense of purpose. So doing what it is that you want to be doing is essential. And interestingly, it's one of the reasons too that people who actually continue to work after they reach typical retirement age, studies show they actually end up living a little bit longer, because they're engaged. They're often engaged with younger people. They have some reason to get up in the morning, and they might be financially independent. That's really the ideal situation. It's not like you're 75 or 80 years old and you have to work to put bread on your table. That's not an ideal situation. But if you're 75 or 80 and you're fully financially independent, but you're engaging with other younger people, you're thinking, you're contributing to society, you actually feel better about yourself. And it might be just part-time work. It doesn't have to be anything major. But research has suggested that these people end up with higher life satisfaction as well. So yeah, balance is the name of that book. And I really, really believe that that balanced component epitomizes true success. True success isn't money, isn't career. That's just a little piece of it. And you can take those pieces too far. Like a table, you can end up building a really fat money leg, a bigger money leg than you ever need. But what's the purpose of that big fat money leg if the other legs are like little twigs, right?
Absolutely.
Table's going to bust when you put something on it, no matter how big the money leg is.
Absolutely. And those are great points. And if, how great would things be, society in general, if people were to be able to pursue their passions and not necessarily pursue careers in which mom and dad have really pushed them towards, because mom and dad realize that this is going to be financially like, a high salary position. They know if I push my child towards this particular career, they can make $200,000 or $300,000 a year instead of this career where they can make $75,000. But little do they know that if you're miserable making this $300,000 and you have terrible spending habits, you could become richer making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 and be happier. Yeah. So if you want to I know you mentioned something like that in your previous book, just about, it doesn't matter how much you make. I mean, you can be more well off than someone who makes a ton of money.
Yeah. I met a guy a few years ago who earned $8 million a year, and he had significantly less than me, and he spent it all. And I would tell my students, you know what? If you earn $8 million a year and you spend $8 million in one, you're not rich. Sorry, you're not rich, because if that guy lost his job, he's done. Like, his consumption habits are so gargantuan that he can't just turn that tap off the day the income dries up. So if something happened with his work, that guy did not have a nest egg. He did not have a safety net. So it was, he had a Maserati, but he owed a bunch of money on it. He had a villa in Spain on a Riviera, but he had hardly any equity in that place because he owed so much money.
Yes.
He would spend just massive sums. And I remember trying to figure out, like, how does someone, and here's the weird thing, the money was tax-free. So he lived in a tax-free jurisdiction. So that $8 million a year, that was real. Like, that was $8 million a year. And somehow he found a way to blow it. So yeah, looks can be really deceiving.
Absolutely.
And like you said, when you opened this up, Rashad, and you said, it doesn't matter how much money somebody makes. It's what you do with what you make.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I appreciate it, man. It's right at the hour right now. And I know I would love to sit down and speak with you after your new book comes out, because I can't wait to, get a hold of it and read it and probably buy it for some of my teachers. I don't have any credentials or anything financially. The only credentials I have is that I talk about money and I tell people that they could be wealthy.
Yeah.
And people come to me. They ask me questions.
Cool.
And I just think it's an amazing thing. And I look forward to, reading your book and having more of a, dialogue with you in the near future. Is there any way that anybody can reach out to you, or any other projects that you have that people can look into or purchase online? Do you want to give any information?
Oh, yeah, I'm glad you asked. So on my website at andrewhallam.com, what I have on there is there's something that I'm doing called the Kindness Lottery. And when you get on a website and people sign up and get a mailing list, and then you join those mailing lists and they send you all kinds of crap every week. I hate that, so I'm not going to do that. Like, I don't do that. But what I do is this. You join my mailing list. What I'll do is I give you a free copy of the first chapter of my upcoming book. It was going to be called Millionaire Teacher's Guide to Living Well, and it's going to be called Balance now. But anyway, that Millionaire Teacher's Guide to Living Well is still sort of on the website. But you can read the first chapter for free just by signing up to the website, and you get to be eligible for my kindness lottery. So I'll explain what that is. If, let's say, you signed up, once a month I pull a name from the people who have signed up, from the total number. And so let's say I pull your name, then I'll contact you and I say, Rashad, you just won the kindness lottery. So here's how this is going to work. You're going to tell me who you think could really benefit from a copy of my book, Millionaire Teacher. And when you tell me who that person is, you give me their address, and I will sign the book to them. You and I might say a few things, so I could write something kind of funny, and I could say like, hey, Rashad thought you might really enjoy this. I might even crack a little inside joke in there between you and the person. Sign it, and then I will mail it myself to your friend. So in a way, I get to give and you get to give. So that's why I call it the kindness lottery. So once a month, I pull a name from my mail list, and I'll mail out a book. That's
incredible. And one common theme I'm seeing with the people I speak with, the self-made millionaires, is kindness, is empathy, and it's amazing. It's incredible, and I really appreciate that every time I have these conversations. So thank you so much, Mr. Hallam. I really know you can have many other things going on right now, but the fact that you sat down with me for an hour to discuss, being a millionaire teacher, I really appreciate it. So we will definitely be in touch. I want you to please give your love to your beautiful wife, and just keep doing what you're doing. You're changing the world one day at a time, and I really appreciate that. Okay.
I appreciate what you're doing. The best thing about this is each of us just made a new friend.
Awesome. And I'll be in touch. I know you respond to emails pretty often. So I'm not gonna terrorize you or anything, but I'll definitely be in touch. Okay.
Thanks very much, Rashad. Take care. It was great.
Hey, good luck, my friend. Hey, great chatting with you. Okay.
Thank you. Take care.
Hey, you be easy out there. Thanks.